wanted to talk for a brief minute. This was originally going to be a video about Lego using AI, which is something that came out recently, and I'll show you the picture. Just one example of this. There are other people who have covered this, and my opinion on this is definitely going to be a little bit more controversial, because here's the thing. For the average person, I don't want to use Lego as the example here because Lego is a corporation with lots and lots of people in the background, and I think that standard is unfair for me as an individual to make. But for an individual person, I'm okay with the use of AI to draw inspiration from. I do understand that AI, for the most part, is basically just fancy theft. And yes, there are absolutely ethical and moral questions to be answered here that I am not equipped to answer. But that said, this is something that Lego made. I don't know if it was them themselves or if it was a contractor through Lego, but either way, that made it out to the public because it was posted on, as far as I know, like the Ninjago Kids website or maybe Lego Kids website. And it was a Ninjago quiz with like 10 different pictures, all of which were clearly AI. This is a perfect example of one. Here's the thing, there are some interesting things to draw inspiration from here. The green suit with the red looks great. You know, obviously details on it are a mess. There are things to admire about this, but there are obviously things that are clearly wrong, especially if you are a Naruto fan, and especially if you were someone like, well, Lego as a company, who does have a pretty big issue with other companies taking IPs from them, very quickly taking them to court, usually. Lego, for the most part, is not the most stringent when it comes to legal cases they absolutely could make, but when it comes to somebody else stealing their IPs, they are usually pretty quick to do so. So for them to use something publicly that very clearly just steals from Naruto, a real bad look. Anyway, like I said, they've made a public statement about it. For the most part, I can understand where they're coming from with that statement. I don't think it ever should have been done because as a corporation, they pay plenty of people to come up with, well, digital art like this. They don't need to be using AI, not for that anyway. To draw inspiration from, again, sure, whatever. I'm not the person to make opinions on that, but I do have my opinions. But we also have to recognize the world that we're currently living in where AI is basically everywhere. And yes, it can be used to speed up processes. The thing I wanted to talk about, though, is Lego's sort of slipping quality over time. Now, Lego's always had its issues, its ups and downs with its relationship with quality. We all have been around, if you're familiar with Bionicle, for the old style of sockets, and of course the 2008 sockets that would replace them, which were much, much worse, and I'll get to those here in a minute. But even today, I have noticed, and this is something I would actually point out checking out Jangbrick's videos, because he has done a lot of reviews, just in general for like the past 10 or 15 years on Lego products, and he'll call Lego out when their quality is slipping, and he's been doing so more frequently, as I have seen in his videos, because it seems like it's a more frequent problem. It's not so much quality in the sense of fragile pieces. They've done a pretty good job of making more and more of their pieces less fragile, and I have to commend them for that, although sometimes it seems to come at the cost of color consistency. That's obviously a problem. But where I do sort of draw a line is clear cost-cutting measures, like, for example, sprue marks that are not flush with the plastic. And when you're talking about a company that touts its, tolerance to like the millionth of an inch or whatever the case, right? That's a big deal, because sprue marks that stick out from a piece and that repetitively show up on specific pieces are a big problem. Sprue marks can cause a lot of problem, and it's kind of a compounding deal. It's like when you lay bricks, but one of the bricks is just barely kind of kinked in the middle or whatever because you laid it on a ground that wasn't level, and that kink just spreads until it gets so much bigger. And there are tons of memes that have kind of showcased this stuff as well. But something else I want to talk about, and I wanted to point to from my own personal experience, is the Lego Technic, right? We are all familiar with Lego Technic pieces, again, especially if you're familiar with Bionicle, pieces that can break, pieces that have their fragile moments. And for the most part, I have to commend Lego on this too, because pieces have been getting better in quality, mostly. One piece that I'd really like to see change, though, is actually a piece that's fairly new. I think it's only within 2 or 3 years. This piece has changed to this. And right off the bat, it might be hard to see what is the difference here, why this change. Well, the change essentially is to take this texture and remove it. Now, they added a sprue mark on the outside though, so that kind of ruins it for me, especially because it's a very obvious sprue mark, which could have been on the inside of the mold here. Maybe not, maybe there are reasons why it has to be on the outside, but that bothers me. However, that does not bother me nearly as much as the pinholes on here. First of all, I've noticed with newer Lego Technic pieces specifically, they have a kind of a greasy feel to them. And I don't know exactly what that is, but it's not something I've noticed from older pieces. Maybe it's just because it's fresh in my mind. It's something I'm familiar with almost immediately, because yes, it has been a few years since I've gotten one of these new, clearly, since they don't make them anymore. However, what I have noticed and what cannot be denied is the friction of these pinholes. It is much worse. And this is better than the first one that I got, because the first that I got were on the small John Deere tractor in green. And first of all, I believe that was a recolor for this piece in general. I mean, obviously it was a recolor for the new version, but I don't even remember if this came in green at all. I have some bootleg ones, but none official from Lego. However, the thing I noticed was that when I put the green ones on a friction pin, they would fall as if they had no friction, or nearly fall. And the thing is, I feel like when I'm using a piece like this, I should not be able to feel the difference in torque, but I can, and it's very noticeable. And if this piece has changed from that green version, or maybe it's just because the color is changed here, it definitely feels better, but not great. That is significantly more loose than this gray version here. And it holds true, it feels like, across the board. Now, I have not had a ton of experience with pieces like this from Lego's newer line of Technic stuff, let's say, but I believe about 2018, 2019, somewhere in there, Lego started to revise a lot of its Technic molds, for the most part for the better. A lot of examples like these where the axle hole has this little divot in it, which is to allow certain types of gears to actually pass it, that has been updated and been modified to be well, I'd say significantly stronger. The lines that run through that, for example, to sort of give way to the stress of an axle being pushed through there, have been made smaller as well, which means just more plastic in that area in general. And it also feels like the plastic itself has changed, though I cannot be the person to test that. What bothers me about all of this is a couple of things. Like I said, quality slipping is not just an issue with the parts themselves, although I would say that's obviously the most important thing, since that's the bulk of what you're paying for. But we've also seen that Lego has, well, upped its prices, both in the pandemic and, of course, with inflation going on. And for the most part, I still have to commend them for this, because they easily could have jump them up a bit more, and they have still been pretty generous with some sets, while other sets are egregiously overpriced. I'm looking at the Aaron's Buggy set, which is insane that that's being on shelves for $50 when it's 270 pieces. There's a Technic crane out there that's got, I think, under 3,000 pieces, and it's $700, which is ridiculous. I have a set that I bought in 2015, the Mercedes Aerox, which has a similar number of pieces, and it was like 150. And yes, I know that like prices go up over time. Like, that's not the thing. But 150 to $700, that's inexcusable. Here's the thing though. It's not even just that. I've seen more and more often as time has gone on, especially with Technic, especially with larger Technic sets, errors also in instructions manuals. Now, a lot of these errors are not things that are going to bother me, like, oh, the gear sequence is out of order, because at the end of the day, gears are just pistons moving faster or slower. They're not the thing that excites me about Lego Technic. I like mechanisms more than I like drivetrains and fake engines or whatever. I can still appreciate those things, sure, and like the Defender, the issue with that, with a universal joint being offset by like 90 degrees or whatever, like that's obviously a big deal, because it means the pieces grind. Or if you saw the Boeing, what's it called? The, oh no, I can't remember. It's the VTOL thing, but, it has a name, whatever. Anyway, the set that was canceled, and how that one, the gears will literally grind and get ruined by using the function. That stuff should never, ever, like, no excuses should that kind of stuff make its way out of quality control. I somewhat get it with the universal joint because literally you just have to be paying attention to the orientation of that little line right there, which is difficult, and you have to make sure that it aligns properly with not only the rest of the stuff in the vehicle in real life, but then make sure it's also the same in the instructions. I get it. I get that. I don't get the gears thing on the Boeing thing. And I don't get just not playtesting. Like, that's the thing that really gets me, because this is a company that makes toys. And anytime you design a new part, that new part should be thoroughly tested, which is why this never should have made its way out into the public. And the thing is, I'm of the belief, maybe it's a conspiracy, I don't know, that this was never tested by Lego. I can't say that with any amount of certainty because I don't work at Lego, for one. I can't go back in time. I'm not a fly on the wall in that facility. But here's the thing. I am privy to, and I have had experience with some prototypes from 2008, all of which contain the older style of sockets. Even to this day, looking at old images of sets like Tahoe Mystica and Galley Mystica, seeing that they use not only still the dark red long double sockets, the dark blue long double sockets, but they're the old variant. Pieces that never hit store shelves that you couldn't get your hands on unless you bought these prototypes. And here's the thing. Those worked. Lime green was where we had the problem in 2007. It wasn't all of lime green, as I've mentioned in previous videos. Elec set, at least the early versions of that set in 2007, did not have the fragility issue that later sets had, from my experience. I'm willing to bet on that, which is probably why sets like Lisovic and sets like Holly just made it out onto store shelves, because Lego was familiar with those long lime green joints, so they probably didn't bother to playtest the new ones that they were coming out with because they looked identical. However, Lego also would have been the only ones to know if that plastic truly changed. If something was added into the plastic or something was taken out, that should have affected its color, or its quality, rather. And maybe that's true. Maybe it happened for more colors than just lime green. I'm also looking at Mata Blue in 2007, which has its own issues with fragility, but thankfully is much less prevalent. Though I do have a Hordika arm from a Gadunka that exploded, but that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, it gets me that this stuff made it past Lego for so long, and I get it with like the Hordika arms. Maybe it's a one-off piece. It's a weird recolor for that piece anyway. I don't know honestly why they made that in blue when they could have given us the armor piece on the torso in blue, which would have been a recolor. It's probably more useful, but whatever, I digress. But the lime green sockets, that's inexcusable to me, and even more so this, because this was a change. They knew going in that this was a change. So, can I say with any certainty that those parts were never tested? No, absolutely not. But I'm pretty certain they weren't. It's part of the reason, again, jumping onto the conspiracy bandwagon here, that I honestly think that Bionicle was canned. Sales were down, sure, maybe. I can't know that either because I don't have insight into the sales numbers on Bionicle. 2008 was, for the most part, a bit of a letdown, in my opinion. The vehicles were great. Everything else was kind of mid, especially following up a year like 2007, which pretty much across the board was universally, as far as I can tell, loved. Maybe not everybody enjoyed it as their favorite year, for sure. Absolutely. It was definitely a change from what came before. But it has aged well compared to something like 2008, where many of the canister sets are pretty samey. They almost feel, in a way, sort of like a precursor to CCBS. And I don't mean that in the sense of fragility. I also mean that in the sense of neutral. So lots of blacks, lots of dark grays, and I have my own issues with that. I've talked about it briefly in other videos too, and maybe I'll summarize it here soon. It's why I think I hold 2009 into the high regard that I do, because yes, while many of the sockets were still quite fragile, at the very least it was trying to again do something new. It never reaching the heights necessarily of 2007, but having a lot of its own charm in its own right. But yeah, it escapes me how for so long Lego kept going out of their way to make new sockets. Even just now, in the last couple of years, creating a version where essentially the holes going through the side of the socket are completely covered. And yet I tested that piece against old pieces in terms of the strength, and it's the same. Now, I only own a few of them, so I can't speak to the quality of the pieces, but I have had CCBS sockets break at the socket itself. I have one nearby, in fact, that I'll show you because this is a fun one. And it's even more broke than this because the parts you can't see, yeah, that's unacceptable. Anyway, here's the thing. One-off breakages are going to happen when you're a company that's as large as Lego, servicing as many customers as Lego is, and have as many themes and as many building systems on the market right now as Lego does. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get it all right, but you should always try, especially when that is kind of your motto. Sure, it's play well, but they always tout their quality and their customer service. The customer service has been good for the most part, so I can't knock that too much, but to see what I have seen, pieces missing, pieces broken, pieces smashed by the, sealing of bags and packages. And I've had that experience myself, seeing sticker sheets that have been ripped up and bent and etc. Like, once it's out of Lego's control, I get it. Things are going to happen. But the items that Lego makes shouldn't arrive to you broken, it feels like. It's always going to happen. Somebody out there is going to be the unfortunate one who gets a fragile piece. But it shouldn't be everyone. It shouldn't be a large majority. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't be what Lego strives for. They should never excuse it. They need to take accountability for their actions because you pay them for it. And you should get what you pay for. And if something goes wrong with your order, that's on Lego, not you. Yep, sometimes you do something wrong and it breaks or it bends or whatever. We've all had that experience. We've all been there. But it was never your fault when those lime sockets broke in 2007 when they were predisposed to doing so. Words are hard. So, as I was saying, that's basically everything I wanted to cover in this video. Just know your rights as a consumer. Don't feel guilty when you have to reach out. And for the most part, Lego's pretty good at responding to this stuff. Let's hope they could just continue to do so. And hopefully, we see another revision of this. All right, so that's it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy this one, make sure to leave a like and subscribe because it does help the channel out. It also tells YouTube that you want to see more stuff like this. And also, it's just kind of the biggest way you can say thanks to the channel. Of course, you can also say thanks by checking out the Patreon, which you can join for, well, not free. It's Patreon. You get the idea. But you can join Discord and Instagram for free. I should make a free tier on Patreon, though, at some point, if I don't have one already. Of course, with all that being said, I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.